Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to a show on Tuesday. I'm your host, the Talking Hot Dog, and I'm joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
Cassisi Harris.
Hey.
And David Rios.
How's it going?
And we are going to be talking about our post-mortem on last week's episode of Vampire The Masquerade, which should be going live this Halloween on all their streaming services. If you're catching us now, it's the week after, so we're talking about all that. I am still in costume because we are filming on the night of Halloween, and yeah, that is that. So before we get into it, I'll do a icebreaker. What have you guys all done for your Halloween so far?
Work.
That's fair.
Same here.
I took my children trick-or-treating, and when asked what my costume was, I told them disgruntled parent.
Good.
But we like Halloween. Like my family, I grew up with it. Like, I mean, sure, everyone grew up with it, but like my family and our culture, like Halloween is a very like fun and important holiday for us. So
Do
Yes.
they trick or treat a lot where you are?
yeah,
Here,
yeah.
there's a lot of trunk or treats. So I can only remember one year where we bought candy, and I think one person came by, so we don't really buy it. Yeah.
We had when we lived in Pennsylvania when I was in art school, we had like such high hopes, like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be great. We're gonna maybe pass out candy. Then we moved there and we're like, oh, we're on a mountain. I'm not sure we're gonna get any trick or treating.
Yeah. For us, it's
But
hit or
it just
miss.
so happened that the village we lived in was, I mean, people barely put up lights for Christmas, but man, they had lights and all kinds of decorations for Halloween. It was a very Halloween themed like set of like set villages and towns and stuff.
No. For us, it's hit or miss because we live right down the street from the city square where they have all the big booths set up that like they do a Halloween walk all the way through downtown. It ends there where they have essentially like a mini festival.
That's cool.
So either kids get loaded up there and don't bother trick or treating, or they want to continue on and they come buy our price later that night. Yeah, I got my base all set up. I have a wood chip front lawn, but has like it just kind of naturally mounded at some point in the middle. So I just always make it look like there is a skeleton trying to crawl out of that mound.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Okay.
I told my wife I wanted to pull a Gabriel and Gracious and just you hit a couple houses and they hit Walmart.
Yep. Yeah.
She wasn't having it. Just so you know. I did not win that argument.
Fair. Yeah. So far, I've also just worked but and some candy so far, but it's been one of the slower years. So we'll see if now that I've left it out as a trunk, see how many kids actually empty it out.
Right.
You get that one kid that takes all of it.
And at this point, like I bought it, someone's got to take it.
Well, I had that conversation with my daughter, and she's like, "Oh, if there was nobody there, I would just go and take the whole thing." I was like, "There's etiquette to trick or treating. You take one and go. Like, what are you talking about?"
You take one and go unless it's after midnight and there's still half a thing in there left.
Right. Then after midnight's fair game, but by that point, if you haven't been kidnapped or something, then
If you haven't been kidnapped, I like how that's the bar. If you haven't been kidnapped, go for it.
Yeah. My friends were talking about he's a dad now, so he's taking his kid trick or treating, and they already finished up. And we're saying, like, man, things are weird because back in our day, we went by ourselves and they're breaking into people's backyards until like 3 a.m.
See, I remember being out forever for trick or treating, but now, like, the sun isn't even fully down, and people are like, "Oh, we're done."
Okay. We do have some housekeeping tonight. First of all, we want to thank everyone who sponsored or backed the last of our Kickstarters. That was the Silverline double feature for Cray and Switchblade. We got fully funded. We're about 150 over our initial goal. So those are going to be sent off to the printers and mailed out to you hopefully soon. Make sure to check out your Kickstarter inbox for your surveys. We need those so you can get all of your information and get those books sent to you. If you do not fill out the survey, we'll not be able to mail that to you.
Yeah,
Forgive if I go through and have a lot of background noise because it's still prime time here. It's 8 a.m. So 8 p.m. So people are coming by.
Nice.
My wife's trying to offset the whole ring the doorbell thing.
Yes.
But you'll hear kids like now.
I got that giant vat of candy that is set out on my porch. So I did also I have smart lights. I have I've gone through and done the whole like Google smart home thing. So at some point my lights will flick over to blood red on the outside. So
Yeah, we had friends that would do the whole animatronic thing with all the you had like skeleton people that would pop up and and sit down, and they ran everything through the PC, so they got pretty involved in that. So
there is a guy in our town, and he turned his front lawn into a haunted house, like a little
Oh, that's
maze and
awesome.
whatnot. Yeah, and the only thing he was asking for is like pet food donation.
Okay. So
You know what I mean? And he goes and takes that to like the local like pet shelters and stuff like that, and like donates it off. Pretty cool.
very cool.
So
we do have one last bit of housekeeping, and that is the Madness Comics Kickstarter. For those of you who don't know, they are the network that helps put us on. They are expanding to Roku, and they need your help to make sure that you can get that channel all set up. So they're at $3,000 of $5,000. We have 20 hours left to go, so we're getting into the final stretch here. 55 current backers. So if you're wanting to get us on your television at home without having to, stream us from YouTube or anything like that, we do have a dedicated Roku channel, and without their ad setup and without having to deal with certain things of licensing that we have to deal with on other platforms. So this will also allow us to hopefully expand and get even more not only eyes but also just cash flow into the network. So that should hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, the Madness Comics Network would expand pretty greatly, and also this would allow other independent comic writers, artists, studios, anyone involved in the space to be able to partner with Madness and Pops and get their show out there at a rate which is much more efficient and cost effective than any other means out there at the moment, really. So not only would you be able to get better, high quality comic content directly into your eyeballs, but also help out independent creators with marketing their independent comics, their shows in the comics space, and this really benefit independent comics in general. So if that is something you're interested in, head on over to Kickstarter.com, look up Earthdog Studios or Madness Comics Roku. They do still have some, looks like some bonus rewards here if you pledge at a higher tier, some original art, some extra books, or if you have a show yourself that you want to get put on the network, they do also have bundles for that. So you can essentially get like your annual contract as part of the backing. So again, head on over to Kickstarter.com/EarthDog and see about either getting yourself some high quality comic content on TV with some original art, some books, some unique collectibles, or if you again run a show, get your licensing set up at the same time, so that way you can immediately start promoting and working your show. Okay. Like I said earlier at the top of the show, tonight we're going to be talking about the postmortem on our Vampire the Masquerade session from last night. Something which we may end up turning into maybe a more frequently recurring segment based on reaction and also player enjoyment. So once we get the numbers back in from podcast services, we will see. But let me grab tonight we'll be talking about how playing tabletop RPGs can help you be a better creator, either writer, illustrator, anyone involved in the creative process for making comics. So the first thing I'll open up is I'll just kind of grab everyone's general thoughts on the session last week, what they enjoyed, what they didn't, what they thought was cool, the curveballs that they threw at other players or other players threw at them, and what they thought about how the session and story evolved.
I mean, I guess I'll start. not having a lot of experience in tabletop RPGs, it's always intimidating understanding when to jump in or how much you should be in character and how much you should kind of go with the environment and not look doofus. So that's kind of intimidating, but it's fun because you get to do those things, and it's fun because it's not nothing. If you're playing a video game, you're kind of directed to do certain things. There is a rotation. There are things that you have to do. In this, you have to decide whether or not this is the right time to use an ability, or can you even do that? I guess it's a lot more thought provoking in how you will engage in this kind of fictional world. And I like that. I thought it was cool.
Wow. Good answer. Myself, I had to say that that with my experience on this, I tried to do something that took me out of my normal comfort zone, and it's you take I created a character that was as I don't want to say kind of stuck up, kind of kind of the pretty boy, the arrogant, and all that stuff, and the person that felt comfortable, shooting other people down or putting them beneath them, everything that I'm not. So and as we went along, it's a lot of like just jumping in there and saying, you know what, I'm taking over here, I'm going to do this right here.
Yeah.
And I that's not my comfort zone at all. So so it was, for me, it had a lot of advantages of bringing a mindset that you're not normally into, and kind of running with those things. And when you translate into story-wise stuff, it gives you a whole new perspective other than your comfort zone that you're constantly running in.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it, and hopefully others did. And also I've never considered having a gold-plated Honda Accord, but at one point in life you got to kind of create these weird things. Yep. And and run with them. So it was great, and it was great watching and interacting with the other members of my team here, and Roland, his yes man. Mm-hmm. Will he make it? Yeah. And I have to say, Kasisi, you were all in there, man. You were just, you wanted it all. You wanted that guy's head on a pike, steal his stuff, take it over.
I know.
No messing around.
Kasisi super actions went from like, oh, I don't know about this, just like dead mugging the camera. I was like, your actions have consequences.
Oh my gosh, that was fun though.
So, and then Jose just trying to hide out as much as he could, being the whole grotesque, non-human looking vampire out of all of us. But he's ready to bring it, and brings it on. So very cool.
My character definitely was not that socialite that your character was, or even Kasisi. But I played Vampire The Masquerade before, and I loved it, and I used to storytell it, live action for it. It was just so much fun. Like, a lot of people can't. I don't want to say a lot of people. I guess some people can't envision what they would do as a character in like a fantasy setting. But I think for some people, it's a lot more relatable when you play a character in a setting that's current. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, because then that's mentally that's more what they can like focus. Oh yeah, but this is what I would do in this particular situation. But like in a fantasy situation, like I have no clue, right? And playing this game, playing these characters with these particular flaws, it definitely allows you outside of your normal status quo to just be silly. I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah,
You go ahead.
we had a lot of social characters, but then also like Jose, your character, just the guy who just kind of like grunts, grabs a steel door, and throws it open, breaking the lock.
But yeah, like I mean, I think it's fun. Like the idea of playing and not even just vampire, like any honestly any role playing game, like the ability to kind of cut loose mentally, you know what I mean, and just be able to physically like mentally picture what your character's doing, and you know that falls on you as a storyteller too, Tim, to be able like to really make you don't have to be super wordy, but to help us visualize the scene that we're in.
Yeah,
and
you have just
I
enough
think that's
details
awesome.
like people can build and paint the mental picture for it.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a good time. Last year was fun. This year, I hope we do this all the time.
Yes, I definitely enjoy it a lot too. Again, that's kind of leads naturally into our first bullet point here. Tabletop RPGs are essentially a form of collaborative storytelling, where the players and the storyteller will use more or less only our imagination and some dice rolls to create a whole set of characters, worlds, and also the story they're in. So that forces everyone involved to think very creatively, and not just thinking of plot beats and actions to take to push the narrative, but also envisioning the scenario and creating the mental picture for how your character interacts with that space. I don't know about you guys, but immediately after the session, I had the mental image of the gold-plated Honda Accord, and then also Cade, Martin holding this guy's head while Cade burns through his tongue. Both of those I think would be great. I don't know if anyone's tried drawing either of those yet, but I thought both are just fantastic mental images.
Right.
You're a very twisted one, Cassisi. Your Cade character was very twisted, so.
And it came out of nowhere. All of a sudden he's all normal, and then it's like, okay, let's smash. And I'm like, wait, what? That's my line. What are you doing?
I thought that was where we were going.
It was.
We got like the whole war scenario thrown out there. I mean, we were hired to do it. I thought I was merciful. I thought I ended this thing in the best way without just killing the person. And Tim took it easy because the claws came out, and I was like, he didn't even scratch us. Dang it! I was expecting the duck and all that stuff.
Right. Well, the fun way how combat works is that it's all contested rolls. So,
yep.
When someone does something, another person reacts. So, Jose leaping at the character.
Yeah.
My character rolled then to fight back to try and counter the grapple, and I think he rolled one hit. So he ended up feeling that.
Yeah.
When David's character came in to shoot him with a holy arrow, he tried to dodge and rolled no hits. So he just had like the worst combat rolls.
The best part was Roland trying to step in and stop it,
and
then Roland got overruled.
Yeah, that's like you can do this if you want to, but it's going to be a contested roll, so it's not going to be easy.
Right. Like I, for one, love like first time we played with Roland, I didn't know what to expect, and like I was so excited when he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be joining back."
Yeah,
it's so fun to role play with.
Yes, I mean his interactions in both the club scene and also with everything in the milk bar.
Oh my god!
Did you make an animated GIF of his dancing?
Oh no, not yet.
I know, right?
I think that yes, that needs to happen.
Kind of like in the end credits at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy. It just needs to be just kind of
Use that as our celebration gift whenever you fund a Kickstarter.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, now that has to happen. Somebody has to do it.
Yes. So I kind of want to grab, particularly from the art-minded people, moments from tabletop RPGs or some experiences where you found that the visuals of the gameplay or of your session like really like stuck with you. Moments where like you thought, well, like even if it wasn't necessarily something that like you then took directly and illustrated or colored or drew, but moments where like it at least got that side of your brain thinking and like active and thinking about like I really like how this looks in my head.
For me, it was the club. When you guys went into the club, like
And you were outside up the top.
yeah.
Talking to a raven.
Hey, sometimes
Yeah.
you have to talk to a bird. But I thought, like I said before, it wasn't like you dropped just like a huge like explanation or description, like 3-chapter description of the whole joint, but like you definitely just like the very simple things you said, the interaction with the owner of the club, and I just drew a blank on what his name was.
Anders.
Yeah, Anders. And like that to me, like when you were explaining that, even though my character wasn't in it, but when you were explaining that, like it very much like visually came into view in my brain.
Definitely. I didn't really bother describing Anders all that much, but for whatever reason, just in my head, I pictured him with like a puka shell necklace and a Hawaiian shirt.
I can see that. I can totally see that.
For me, things couple of things that stood out. I mean, obviously, Roland's dance on the dance floor. I had a visual of that, but
You will forever have a visual of that.
but a couple other ones that stood out was Roland in the golden accord, in the dark with the low lights and stuff like that, and the street lights lighting things up, some glittering off of the gold reflections and stuff. And then a big one for me was when Kasisi's character just did a running bolt at the door. The door just boom.
Oh my god!
I just pictured this, this whole kind of stronghold warehouse, and just full running towards it.
Yes.
Boom! Here you go. So, yeah, those are some of the things that my mind translated into visual images of what it would be. So, yeah, pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, there's a lot of moments where like the imagery of the actions you guys chose or the decisions made with your characters like really stuck with me. But one of the things that besides the one I already mentioned, one that made me chuckle quite a bit was the idea of in the back of the chord you have Martin on one side, Cage on the other, and then Willie Make It sitting on the bump in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting on the hump. Yep.
But thinking about the writing side of things, obviously as a storyteller, it's different from a player's perspective because I already have the outline of the world set out in front of me, and I don't necessarily know like each plot beat, but I know who's at each location and what their relation to the story is. So, but how you guys choose to handle that or how you guys choose to interact with that is completely up to you. So, for a storyteller, you almost kind of like stretch that muscle of when you're in the middle of writing something and then you find that your characters that you're writing kind of go off the rails a little bit, or you end up like writing and starts going a little sideways. And like, well, I can bounce around with this and make it work. Pull it back onto my outline. But I want to get Cece's thoughts on how did this stretch your writer's muscles?
I think there's a couple. So there's two things that it'll tickle, right? The world building side is tickled because I have to quickly kind of figure out this world. And although it's set in something that is familiar, there's this whole social system that is not familiar.
Mhm.
So just trying to dive into that, and then how I have to interact with people who are from different sects of that social, you know, interaction that happens in this world is one thing. And then the other is character development. A lot of times you're so invested in, from my perspective, you're so invested in one character and how that character thinks and how that character reacts that you don't, a good writer understands all the characters, their motivations and everything. But I'm in a world where, man, I get to kind of take a seat back and see how David's character responds to things, and Jose's character responds to things, and Roland's character responds to things. And then it kind of tickles my brain like, oh man, yeah, I guess, this is the level of arrogance that a character would have, right? Like, it's my ride, my servant. I can step in the club and you will follow me, right? Like, there would be type deal that, it just kind of tickles your brain and you kind of store it and you go, oh, noted. That's a cue that I can use later on. Jose not going into the club, but climbing the side of it to get into the club. That's a whole thing. Noted, right? Of course.
Yeah.
It's not just about hiding yourself. It's about, okay, well, what's the alternate route, right? So I think it just kind of, saves little notes in my brain on, oh man, this is how certain characters would do it outside of the way that I would think of how to do it. And that's kind of fun because you're just kind of building like this notebook of stuff based on how other people view these characters. So.
Well, I had a view. Speaking about Jose's character on the roof, I just had this picture of just this darkened, moonlight lit scene of maybe Jose's character kind of hunched down, with weird thing, and then this raven that's up there that's just kind of kind of deranged a little bit, kind of twerked, the feathers are kind of shooting out here and whatever, and maybe something that you might picture like Chris Bacalo drawing or something like that, just kind of a weird distinct style of just this conversation that they're having, but they kind of aren't. I kind it's just kind of this behind the scenes thing that they have going on, where they're communicating. I don't know if in the story were they actually talking or were they kind of communicating through their minds or what type of thing. But
I was under the understanding we were actually talking. Me and the bird were actually having the conversation.
Okay. Yeah. That was kind of that same mental image, David, where like for me it felt like something out of like a panel out of Sandman or something, where Morbius or is it Mobius? Mobius, is talking to
Morpheus.
Morpheus. Yeah, Morpheus is talking to this bird. But
that was my Matthew moment.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I got Mobius on the mind because I've been catching up on this season of Loki.
I was gonna say, he's not a member of the TVA, so.
Yeah, but howdy to everyone in chat. If you have any thoughts on how RPGs help you tell stories or be creative, be sure to put them in there, and we'll get to them at the end of the show. For me, as like a storyteller, it was also an interesting moment where it forced me to think outside the box of like, if you need to make an edit or something, or you need to tighten something up, you need to find weird fixes because, like if you're working for a page count, you need to get within 22 pages. Here, I'm like, okay, I need to end within 3 hours. And, Jose jumping onto the top of the building, that was not something that I necessarily accounted for, but it makes sense. Of course he'd do that. He's a super strong Nosferatu. He's going to try to resolve problems physically as opposed to socially. And so sneaking in is definitely more in his skill set. But then my thought was, Anders already is familiar with this coterie, and how would an ancient Malkavian, who probably has expanded beyond his normal skill set, choose to interact with the Nosferatu of Orlando? Because that's got something he has to do on a regular basis. I'm like, oh, he probably has a bird familiar that he can project through, and it's probably just as psychotic as him, and he could probably do it at the same time because he's been around for so long. So the idea of, and I was like, oh, my Nosferatu is going upstairs. I'm just going to send my bird up. Yeah. And then like something like that, and ends up leading to a very cinematic moment of Martin hunched over on the rooftop under the neon of like downtown Orlando at night with just this weird bird talking to him, and he's talking back to a bird, just kind of like it's a, it's an everyday occurrence for them.
That would actually be a very cool, cool picture, yeah.
But yeah, so like from were we challenging, I guess, is my question to you, Tim. Like, as players, some of us having already played with you before, and obviously some of us not, were we challenging players?
I would say that you were, I think it depends. So I don't necessarily challenging because I don't necessarily think of it.
Yeah.
I mean, unless someone tells me they want to play a real campaign, I don't try to kill my players.
Right. Yeah.
But there are some people who are telling me like, yeah, I really want to play. Like, I have some D&D players like, I really want to play a hard D&D campaign. I'm like, all right, great, you're getting super high level monsters thrown at you all the time, and it's up to you to think outside the box. But like with this, I just wanted to bring a bunch of like social puzzles, combat encounter, and some investigation to you guys, and let you and just like lay out the setting, and I'll put all the pieces on the table, and then you guys get to put whatever peg you want to in whatever hole, and then it's a matter of bouncing back and forth on that. So it wasn't really challenging, but the solutions you guys came up with were like ones that like, I mean, like two big solutions were sneaking up on top of the building, but then also absolutely burning off the guy's ton and throwing him in torpor is one way to handle that problem. It's a very specific way of doing it, but it works. You completed the task. And kind of the Cassisi's note, that is probably the most merciful way to handle something in this universe. Is like, we just remove his ton, put him in torpor for a few hundred years, and try and glamour the innocents and send them on their way.
I have a question though. The very first question that I asked about getting paid, when I looked at everyone's face when I asked that question, I was like, okay, should I have not asked this question? I was like, wait, what? Should I not ask this?
No, absolutely. That's my favorite thing is also, I always tell people, like, play as much as you want. Like, this is your game, play as much of it as you want.
It's so weird.
It's almost like a moment where the question as the player comes through so strongly that it forces the characters to come back onto the players in the room. Like, it almost forces, like, whatever alternate dimension that these characters live in has somehow invaded our own, and they're now inhabiting their players. Where like you're talking to the like, even if you guys are tight with this Baron, usually it's a very top down hierarchy. So
I was expecting you to cuss me out. That's what I was expecting, but I was like, oh, he gave us.
And also, we put this relation pretty much because like my notes on the character, the things that you guys don't necessarily know, is the fact that and then it gets revealed in the back of the conversation, the fact that he's in a tricky spot where he's getting pressured by the Inquisition and is getting pressured by the Baron's Council. So his choice is go with you guys or risk all out war on either side. So you play into that, kind of forces that moment of, every good, character in some way is applying pressure on another character in the scene. So that created a really interesting storytelling moment where you're applying pressure on a character and he's in a point where he can't bend outside of just like, all right, I'll figure something out for you.
Mm.
See, in my character's point of view is knowing the power that the Baron had. That like not that I knew anything about his character stats and stuff like that, but like
Right.
in regards to like the lore of the game, like that was more of a actual Joe response as
Yeah.
opposed to a Martin response. I'm like, what?
Right. Like Barons are at least, like like several generations higher than you.
No, I figure.
Yeah.
Figure. Yeah, that's why I was. Yeah, it was pretty.
But it was like, but I mean, it was a really interesting position because like that is something that happens in the world all the time. Is that either lower coteries maybe get ahead of themselves and then it means themselves in hot water, or if they're competent and fool themselves, the Baron's like, all right, I'm going to use this to further ingratiate you to.
That's funny.
So like I said, that was definitely a Joe response to like, wait, I would have never said that. What are you doing? We're all about to die.
That's what I was like. Okay, he's gonna either cuss me out and be like, "You ain't getting nothing. You better be lucky you're in this place." But that's not.
We get like if you're in a point where if the Baron was, had a more secure power base, he probably would have tried to make an example of you. But being in that situation where he's like, and I feel like you kind of intuited the fact that he's like, I'm not calling him Blood Hunt, but I'm calling you guys to take care of something.
Right. That's why I said that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So like, because CC came into that, and definitely Cade and them like, oh, that means that they're in a really bad position if they're not going for a Blood Hunt immediately.
That's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, that was. I mean, yeah. Speaking of like writing positions, like, how like your decision to like formulate that question presented that way, like, was it just something that kind of happened spur of the moment, or like was that something that like you went like was that something like you were developing Cade in your head and you're thinking like, this is how he'd act and this is the clue I'm getting. This is how he's.
Well, I needed to want something out of this, right?
Okay.
And there was nothing, in order for me to understand how my character was going to experience the rest of the story.
Yeah.
I needed to want something. And so I was like, okay, well, he didn't present anything to us that we would get. So maybe I could get something out of him. Like, even if you had answered, you get to live at the end of this if you're successful, it would have been, oh, okay. So now all the decisions I make have to be, from the perspective of I want to stay alive and therefore I need to do, or I guess stay in the state that I am. I'm not alive. So all those decisions were the subsequent decisions would be based on that. And so when you said, oh, you get domain, okay, well then all my subsequent decisions will be greedy in terms of domain, even though I'm not that type of person. I was like, okay, well that was the bone that I was given. So now every,
Yeah, kind of getting that initial stake thrown at you, and then like, I mean, like this time my character's in there after the stamp right to me. Yeah. Definitely.
I think you played your character awesome. Like both of you guys, played your character so good.
I thought everyone on the coterie was fantastic. It was, it was great.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone did well.
So I know Jose has a lot of experience on this, but I don't know. But David can also maybe talk about some stuff going forward. But looking at how a tabletop RPG can inspire you in the moment, you're talking about like how like you can create these great like mental visual moments or great like things like that. And after this, I'll pose a similar question to CC and myself. We can talk about the writing side, but for now, the art side for Jose and David. How do you either going forward from this situation now, maybe in the week after, or Jose in your storied history of playing RPGs like this, has there been a moment where you've taken some of that inspiration from a game or a session like this and actually put it into some sort of illustration or visual artwork? Have you found that like you've gotten the idea of like maybe I should, I've built this mental character in my head, maybe I should draw this other character kind of like how I pictured them or something like that?
I have mostly not necessarily with there are some characters I've created for as a storyteller, right? That I was like, oh, those are really cool. I kind of want to like explore those characters more. And so like I've drawn them out or like roughed them out at bare minimum, roughed them out, right? There's actually a few that when I played, so I used to play live action role playing in Indiana, right? And where I'm from in Elkhart. And then there's a few times that I played in Indianapolis when I moved to Indianapolis, right? I played with my best friend and another friend of ours. And our coterie that we had, our characters were so like uniquely different that I actually carried their characters as well as mine over into another vampire game I was running with other people because they were so unique. And it's funny because when this other group of gamer friends that I have met a couple of the other guys, they're like, "Oh yeah, we played the story with blah blah blah." He's like, "That's based on me." And I'm like, "Yep, like that's exactly who that was based after." Like those characters are specifically because I enjoyed role playing with those characters. I got to see how my friends, played out like that particular build, that character build that they had, and it was so unique that I didn't want that to end. Even when I moved away, I didn't want it to end. So I brought those characters into, the vampire universe that I created for an entirely different role playing group.
That's dope.
It's so funny that you mentioned Elkhart. My first experience with a tabletop RPG was in Elkhart when I used to live in South Bend, Indiana.
You lived in South Bend?
Huh? I lived in South Bend, yeah, for a time, yeah.
Dude, I grew up in Plymouth.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was born in South Bend and I grew up in Plymouth. And then as an adult, I moved to Elkhart.
That's funny.
We might know people.
Hey.
You learn something new even on our stream.
They've either like a previous experience or this experience going forward. Do you think that some of the inspiration from like mental images that you've conjured during these sessions is something that you have had the want or like to actually incorporate into like your physical art? Like, have you found yourself sketching a gold-plated Honda Accord?
I don't know if I'd be willing to do it justice personally.
I'm gonna type that in an AI art generator just to see what comes up.
Gold-plated Honda Accord.
I actually thought very briefly about it and then convinced myself it wasn't going to be worth it for the Accord part. But no. As far as the other aspects of it, I've been thinking about some things, and not that I'm anywhere near doing them at this point, but we've had conversation in the past about doing some kind of, some discussions on the horror themes and stuff like that. So with some of the things that we covered in this vampire game, with some of the images and all that, drove me to think a little bit more about this, like this horror-based thing, and things like, picturing, Jose's character up on the roof and that type of art style, went into some thoughts about, doing like a horror book and incorporating those type of, distorted image styles and things like that in that. So yeah, that definitely was something that I thought about carrying over and things like that. It's just I don't have the penciler training and stuff. I've been kind of just winging it and focusing more on the coloring stuff, but yeah, it did spark some things and some images and some ideas about, some of the horror stuff with some of those images, that I saw in this. Particularly the stuff like on the roof, and not necessarily the gold-plated Honda, but more of the night scenes with the lights and the car driving by and stuff like that. Also, in in that horror type book, I was thinking, kind of imagining in my head, a little more of maybe more of a period piece rather than a modern day, but semi steampunk type, Gotham by Gaslight type settings, those type of time frame. So it wouldn't be a car going by, but it could be like some kind of a wagon or something like that. But just things like that. Yes, that those images and things that I got from that carrying over into other things, and maybe someday when I do practice more penciling and get better at it, maybe I might do something like that.
Very cool.
I will tell you, Martin's original build, in my head, he was completely like an old James Cagney character. You know what I mean? Like, I envisioned him in black and white with the Stetson hat on and, covering his face. And because, obviously because he's hideous and repugnant, he had a mask covering his face. But, like, yeah, like, totally with the hat on. It just, like, casually kind of hide his face from everybody. And in my head, he was in every scene he was in black and white. And it was probably raining.
Well, see, I differ in my view that I got of that is I didn't picture him with like a hat or something. I pictured him more in like a hoodie type, something that, because it is fairly modern day, and
right,
I would kind of
right, and that's pretty much the look I feel I went with, right?
Yeah,
but like originally that was his, like I said, that was his original build. He was an old like private dick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But remember when they kind of redid the Superman and they put him in like he had like a hoodie and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that kind of style, kind of similar type of look, just not I'm here bright. It's more of the grays, blacks, something that wouldn't be off the shelf. It would be something that maybe a little tattered, not as tattered as like Epi Thatcher from Grendel type thing, but something that's kind of in between, something that's been worn for a while, and
right.
People, because you're going for the look of, you don't want people looking at you, so you don't want something bright and shiny and all that. You're almost getting to the point where people don't want to look at you. It's like, oh, that. Forgive me for saying this, but that degenerate or whatever. I don't want to. Don't look the other way. Let's.
Right.
Don't stare. That type of thing is what I got from.
I had one character in another game, and the way they described the Nosferatu also conjured like a really strong mental image for me. They described him as wearing, essentially at old times, they had a baseball cap with a hoodie pulled over and aviator glasses, but they didn't have lips, so they just had the worst smile all the time. So essentially described it like from any other side, it looks like a Mr. Robot until you're dead on, and then it's a cryptid.
So are you picturing something like the Guillermo del Toro Hellboy type, that type of a look and feel? Is that kind of?
I think for a lot of Nosferatu, they're described to have like hideous mutations, but they can vary from individual to individual.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in the Bloodlines game, originally there was like one dude with like a giant like chunk taken out of his head, but Yeah, kind of idea. It looked almost something kind of like Ape Sapien-ish, or it almost like if you took Slenderman and then made him a computer hacker. That was how that player described his Nosferatu.
I know, like in the OG Vampire Masquerade, Nosferatus were straight up meant to look like Nosferatu from
Yeah,
the old silent movie.
yeah. Well, like super sharp ears, or like broken noses, or like their teeth will be like razor thin, or things like that. So we didn't see the extent of his mutations at all at any point. He never took his costume off, essentially. But the way he described it was, you just, from any aside, just kind of look like a guy who was maybe pale, and then we were looking at him on it. I was like, oh, he doesn't have any lips. It's all teeth.
Like what's his name, Baraka from Mortal Kombat?
Yeah.
It's so cool just hearing the description. There's so many stories you could I'm picturing like a dead mouse kind of DJ who always wears a mask, but he's a Nosferatu. So that's how he kind of, gets folks on the side, is he's the best DJ, and then everybody wants to go backstage and he kind of can have his meal. I mean, it's so many interesting stories, so many interesting ways you can hide a person in plain sight. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
And when you play this particular game, you have to consider that, right? Even if you have a success, if you have a bestial success, then you succeed, but in a very ferocious way. It doesn't have to be like a physical ferocious. It can be, you know what I mean? Well, I mean, it's still a physical ferocious, but like your eyes can flare out. You can like smile and your fangs are bare when you like leap to do this particular action and whatnot, or whatever you're trying to attempt.
Yeah, that's the messy criticals are my favorite systems, because it's like you succeed, but also you put your entire life at risk because you're now acting like a beast. So having the Cade just break into a roadie run after chucking through a door, or Jose succeeding, Martin succeeding in tackling this guy, but in doing so ends up latching his fangs on the guy's neck. Which it's the fun back and forth you have with that system. I feel like it adds a lot to the game, in a way that's like, when you're writing characters, you want to write them in a way that they're failing forward if they have a struggle, but this is in a moment where you almost succeed backwards. Yeah. But kind of speaking of all this, you already kind of talked about how this made you think about character development. But Cece, as a writer, how did inhabiting this body and having this dialogue and having bouncing dialogue off your other players and then also off the NPCs of the world and the actions you chose, how did that make you think about writing characters? How did that make you think about how you would write dialogue or create character backbones, essentially?
Yeah, in real time, it's hard because you kind of, what do I want to investigate out of this conversation? So you're thinking real time, like, so there's space, but the stronger the other characters that you interact with are, the more that I think, and if you understand your own motivations, that's the key. If you understand your own motivations, the more that dialogue seems natural and the more the dialogue flows. I think, sometimes being overwhelmed, being new to the game can kind of stall you out. But as a writer, though, I think, man, there's so many, to me, the characters are the biggest part of what happened that night we played. So, even I'm storing Trey's character in my head because I would like to write that as a sidekick character, right? So I'm gonna add some aloofness to that character because he's so entitled. But at the same time, that's the biggest thing as a writer that came from this. So when you interact with people who interpret characters in their own way, there's so many things that you can get in like a short amount of time that, again, like I mentioned before, you just kind of store it all. Like as a writer, and you kind of embrace, oh man, that is a good way to write that character. Like combine Drax and Trey together, I think, where they're always in front, but they're entitled to be up front.
Yeah.
And they perform actions and they're awesome, but they perform actions because they don't care and they're ignorant or naive
Yes.
to how everybody else feels, or like it's just it would be so great to see that and laugh at what would come out, or rejoice because they're like OP. And you get to see them like take something down and be arrogant at the same time and think they're saving the world. So I don't know. That's what I take at it. Yeah.
I think it's also really interesting because and it's almost something where you almost get more from interacting with other people's characters than you do your own.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for me as a storyteller, when we talked about it, how Cade needed something to be engaged with, like some stakes that he needed to be working for. So for me, this as a storyteller, when that introduction happened, then some of Cade's following discussions that he's had and the choices he made, I kind of got the idea of like, Cade is a guy who was in a system and the system got him killed. So now that he's in a new thing, he's like, you're paying me up front.
Yeah. It's survival, right? I mean, my character was supposedly constantly hunted, right? So every decision has to be for a reason, right? And then you can't dilly-dally. Everything has a consequence. What's up? But
absolutely.
It's pretty good.
Make a decision, stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So obviously, something that we talk about in a lot of places is as a writer, as an artist, a lot of stuff comes in being flexible and adaptable. Either you have to change something to meet a page count or to make edits, or getting notes back, you need to change some art, or you need to redo a color palette, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you playing in a tabletop RPG where you're forced to make be flexible in a second based on someone else deciding to do something? This would be a question for Roland if he was here, but based on like there's a bow and arrow in the room and there are knives out. Your plan to negotiate is suddenly going out the window.
And he went out the room too. So in the he's just coming in. He goes out to peace, comes into like war.
It was the Donald Glover meme in Community coming in with the pizzas and everything's on fire.
Right.
But so how did thinking about this? How did you find the experience of playing this game forced you to be flexible and adaptable? And how do you think that also applies to being a writer or being an artist or a colorist?
I'd say finding that moment is big.
Yeah.
That flip moment, the moment where it just kind of tips into a different direction and gets somebody engaged from a writer perspective.
Yeah.
Like the bow and the whole servant walking in was the tip moment for me. Like, oh, I guess we're going there. I guess we're like going there.
Yeah, I got tired of waiting.
Funny.
Send in this tension setting. Send in the servant. Let's just get
You pop the trunk and get the crossbow.
There's a conversation. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth, and then Trey just turns back on him. Benson.
That's funny.
Let's take this guy down a notch.
People with different personalities, different characters, goals, different character concepts. You can go in planning to do things a specific way, and then it just all goes off the rails because of one action, right? One action another player plays. You kind of have to learn to be more adaptive in regards to how you play your character, and this is a character you've created, right? Albeit, like sometimes you create them, sometimes you don't. Like I think we all created our characters, to be the way we wanted them to be, and some of the motivation I had for my character, I kind of had to flip just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we're going this route. Now I have to adapt my character to accommodate that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was to be sneaky and get from one place to another as unseen as I could, and then all of a sudden, like it hit the fan when the driver comes in with a bow and arrow, and Cade comes out with like blades out of nowhere. Like, oh, okay, this is the direction we're going. Time
Yeah.
to flip what I'm doing to accommodate.
But it's good that twist though, right? That in that
Yeah,
twist you become so, relatable to the character because you're like, oh crap. Now what can you do? Like, oh, okay, that makes sense that a person would do X, Y, and Z. And those twists, I think, I think that's what draws a person into the story the most, right? Things did not go as expected. And how are they handling this thing? And like, oh crap, yeah, that's a pretty solid way to handle the flip, right? Like I
right.
don't know.
See, and for Martin, it was when those claws came out. It's like, oh, it's all fun and games. Oh, now it's starting to get stuff that's really going to cause pain. I need to make sure that nobody gets hurt. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to go toe to toe with this guy, right? And then blades come out. I'm like, wait, what?
Oh my
I'm not
god,
by myself.
that's funny.
But then, like, it switched like I said, it switched what I was initially going to do because I was just going to delay. I was going to, just try and go toe to toe to keep it so you guys can get out. And then I was like, oh, I'm not the only one getting down, so let's do this then.
You gotta remember, Trey's is arrogant, and he gets bored easy.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, well, let's start this going. Let's knock the guy down a notch, and then and then the guy sees him jumping in, going, "Oh yeah, baby, I've been waiting for this."
I was ready.
This bloodlust we never saw the entire night. All of a sudden it shows up. We're like, who is this guy?
I don't know if it's like Bless. I almost imagine like Cassisi's character a little bit like Leon the Professional. Like it's like I don't want to fight you, but if I have to, no one will know who you are.
Right. I was so ready to display skills, and I was like, man, yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
I mean, but like those moments, I feel like also kind of like touching on like the art side of things, where that sudden tonal shift in a narrative, I feel like is something that like he says Roy draws a reader in a book, or like I thought also movie runs. I thought that's what Guardians of the Galaxy #3 did really well, was the sudden tonal shift when the spoilers, they killed all the other animals in the cage. They're like, oh, this isn't as happy-go-lucky anymore.
Right.
And that moment also then gives the artist moments to, or the color Steve moments to darken the panel to make things seem much more grim and much more like tight and intense, or the gives the room for the illustrator and inker to suddenly like change a blind weight or change the visual intensity of some of these characters to
I'll
add
say
more
that
gravity
for
to
me,
it.
mentally, it changed the color of our particular thing. You know what I mean? It went from like, to me, like moonlight, muted tones and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, weapons and whatnot were brandished, and then like the entire like feel, the entire like beat of what we were doing, like shifted and picked up, and colors came in, so to speak.
Yeah.
Actually, for coloring wise, this whole story had kind of a roller coaster for me. Visualizing, coloring and all that. I would originally think of a type of color set for, when we're with the Baron, something that, maybe some like reds and things for the environment, the rooms that he's in, like burgundies and things like that. So it's kind of, like old fabric and things like that. And then you go out and you end up partial in the street quickly. I don't want to touch on that one that much, but then you go into the club, and you've got a lot of like multiple colors and things from lighting and disco ball or projection lights and things like that. So you got the brighter things like that showing up in that aspect, and then you've got the drive and the getting to the warehouse, and a lot of darks, really dark with moonlight, stuff like that. Also, the roof scene with the crow, also that moonlight and all that. And then you get the transition to going into the final confrontation, and you've got things with like maybe some reds and oranges and yellows because of the environment with the stoked fire that's starting to go out and all that. Maybe lighting that comes more towards from the floor up as opposed to from the top down. So I got a lot of different color variations based off of the locations as we're going through. And then obviously, full board Cassisi with just in your face boom colors. Here it is. Here's your shock impact. The knives are out. Where the hell those come from? Bam. Here's the in your face. The art, the colors, everything. Just boom. Here it is. We're going. Here's the action sequences and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I definitely need like a full like splash page of just Cade's gloved hand like taking a piece of like charcoal through this guy's tongue.
Right.
The light coming through his fingers.
Yeah,
like
the
just
glow.
over his head, the dude's Dominic head.
Yeah.
As the coals like come in like this, and there's that's what's up.
The glow on his between his fingers, maybe a little bit of smoke where the charcoal is burning Cade's hands a little bit as he's but it's like it's so worth it to him to make this point that he's willing to take the bird.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one last thing before we wrap up. One thing that I also find, in comics, known for characters with superpowers or in some way trying to describe something beyond, the average human capacity, even if it's not a superpower, you have characters with special capabilities or special abilities. And sometimes illustrating it can be a little difficult because you're trying to contemplate something that doesn't really exist. Like, how on earth do you write or showcase someone with super senses?
Mm-hmm.
But playing a game like Vampire, where I think everyone in the group used one of their discipline powers at least once or twice.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had Cade use the Auspex. At a point, we had some. We had a lot of persuasion. We had Martin both leaping a couple times as well as doing the potent body to throw open the door. But you kind of force everyone in the room to work together to describe these powers both visually and from a narrative perspective. So what do you guys think on how RPGs can help illuminate how you describe the supernatural abilities, either superpowers or describing a character's skill set in terms of like, how on earth do you showcase someone just being super persuasive?
That is a tough thing. I mean, you look at some of the some of the old comics that had the the squiggly lines and all that stuff. That's not usually what you do nowadays.
No,
but or even like Peter Parker Spider Sense is like, bzz, here you go. Yeah, that one's a bit tough. You may do possibly like in the persuasion, you may through the artwork possibly throw some kind of a confusion, maybe something a little blurry around the edges, possibly for the target. But yeah, that one's a tough one. Jose probably has better answers than it.
For me, I think it was kind of really cool, like how we showcased it in your scene this day, where you charm that bouncer. It's just Trace kind of comes up, touches this guy on the shoulder. The guy's eyes dilate, and he's like, "No, we're going in." It's just like these like two little like small physical cues, but I feel like they did a lot to just showcase what was happening.
I think it may be easier for a writer because you have the context, right? Like you have the positions of people, and you have things like a thought that you can say, like you can actually say a thought. So, telepathy becomes kind of easier for a writer to describe more so than the artist to draw, even though you can, right? You can kind of maybe go in on somebody's face and then kind of have them looking kind of wonky and compelled to do something. But I think it's so much easier I think it's so much easier for a writer to sort of pick up that cue that, oh, that person's standing there. Maybe everybody freezes, right? And in that moment, you're just describing, and you can literally say, in the moment, right, a person does X, Y, and Z before this person can do Y. I don't know. It's just it feels so much easier to describe it.
Definitely kind of get. I think also like a lot of things that David had mentioned, like older like comic tropes. I think a lot of that came from old Marvel scripts where like Stan Lee would write, like on this page, Xavier mind wipes 5 people and then proceeds to whatever. And then Kirby's looking at it like, you want me to do what?
Right. What does that even mean? Yeah, it's so funny.
I will say from an artist's point of view, being able to, in your best way possible, to verbally explain what your character's doing. Like, when I told you I was trying to say, asking the mechanics whether or not I can do my soaring leap, horizontally as opposed to vertically. Trying my best to explain that I want to, like, just kind of start just lunge with like every supernatural force that I could to, like, trying to lunge with ferocity. But just trying to describe that scene, or even like the scene of, like, pretty much anything, like ripping off the door, in every way possible, be as descriptive as I can. Even when I read a script, it's hard for me to visualize it if I'm just reading it. Sometimes I either have to like doodle it off to the side, or I have to say it out loud. You know what I mean? Scene 1, panel 1. You know what I mean? This is the describing the scene. This is what's happening, and then that helps me, like, to then kind of flesh out my thumbnail for that particular panel. I think some artists work that way. I mean, I know I do. Just because sometimes it's not easy for me to register or get that visual in my head if I don't actually hear myself saying it, or even hear anybody say it, to be honest with you. So, like, when you guys are describing your particular scenes and stuff like that, it just makes it that much more focused in my mind of what's going on between your guys' actions, my actions, and the the DM's, like, antagonist, like, reactions to what we're doing. Like, I guess focuses it all in and makes sense to me. It just sets the layout, sets where, what I mean, where we are on the plane. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's a little bit how my mind works, because there's something wrong with me.
Fair enough. Okay, well, this has been That's Our One Show on Tuesday. We've been talking about how playing tabletop RPGs can inspire you and also help you just be a better writer or illustrator. Next week we have a topic, and that topic is in a different tab. 1 second.
Like, and it goes a little something like this.
Yes.
I've never seen a hot dog confused before.
I know. I think this might be the first time that Pops Van Sant got an ad read from a hot dog.
You don't know that for sure.
It's Pop, so it might not be the first time.
Might not be, yeah. But see there. Wow, it's running really slow. Oh, yes. That's right. Next Tuesday, it's the first Tuesday in November, which is Election Day. For those of you who are keeping track of your local elections. So what we'll be talking about is we're going to put together a poll. Also, I'm going to reach out to everyone in our behind-the-scenes group as well. I want you to put together your nominations for your favorite wacky and weird comic characters, and we're going to have our own democratic process voting for our favorite wacky and weird comic characters.
Wow, what qualifies as wacky and weird, though?
Who
Anything
can I
that
bribe to agree with me?
right.
Gwenpool?
Gwenpool. I mean, there's some weird moments, but I almost go like Spider Pig, Combo Man.
Okay, got it.
That
Condiment King?
was it. Disarmor, the guy in D&D, the guy. Disarmor is in DC. The guy who just loses his limbs.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, things like that. So just weird kind of out there characters, either like the concepts out there or their powers are stupid or their concepts just So of course I'll be out there representing Combo Man, the unsung hero of the Marvel Comics, who I want Marvel to just, give me 12 issues, Marvel. I will make Combo Man the most important part of it. All right. But make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday and Sunday, for our Silverline shows. Head over to Kickstarter.com, look up Orthodox Studios, go ahead and back the Amanda Comics Roku channel. Help us get on TV so that way we can get you even better content and help other creators get their content out there.
There's a lot of information on the site, so about some advantages and things like that. So if you have time, check around, look into it. There's some good stuff there. So
yes, and one I think is one of the coolest things about the pitch that Pops put together is the fact that he actually goes through the full budget breakdown on the Kickstarter, which very rarely do other people in the independent comic space actually go over making a sensible budget. So make sure to go ahead and do that and help us get on your TV. We'll be back next week, but until that time.
Oh my gosh, I'm so prepared.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
wait, you got it?
Got it.
Boom.
Make mine Silverline.
Woo woo.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.